talking about the Mempool with Jimmy Song.
Interested in Bitcoin?
Bitcoin is a very vague concept to a lot of people.
Need to know more about cryptocurrency?
We're going to talk about the basics. This is something that people just have no idea about what crypto is.
How about buying, selling, and mining?
Tony, I think that's one of the things that's going to make us a little different from some other shows.
We're getting our hands dirty.
Then listen to Gary Leland and Tony Sakala, better known as the Crypto Cousins, on the Crypto Cousins podcast. This week's price.
The price of Bitcoin is $10,680. That's up $662.40 in the last week, or 6.8%. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the Crypto Cousins Thursday edition. Gary Leland here.
And this is Tony Sakala.
Tony, how you doing?
Fantastic.
Yeah, we haven't talked in a few days now. I'm actually in San Diego.
Yes, the big D misses you, Gary.
The big D misses me. If you happen to be in San Diego today, which, what is the date of today? Today, March the 1st?
Thursday's March 1st. It's a special day.
It's my birthday.
It's Gary Leland Day in Arlington.
Oh, yeah. In Arlington, Texas, it is Gary Leland Day as of last year when the mayor pronounced March 1st Gary Leland Day. So it's Gary Leland Day in Arlington. It's my birthday, so I can have a party if I want to. Or if I can cry if I want to. I can cry if I want to, too, I think, too.
You can do whatever you want. I think you can pick up a couple free coffees.
If you're in San Diego at the Social Media Marketing World Convention and you happen to hear this, come up to me and say happy birthday, because that's probably the only way you would know. And then I'll know you're a cousin, because I don't think anyone else would know in San Diego it's my birthday unless they listen to this episode.
Or if they live in Arlington.
Well, we'll be in Arlington. Well, yeah, that's true.
Well, they could be traveling.
They could be. I've never seen anyone from Arlington there that I knew. They could be from Arlington, but they still would have to. Oh, you're saying they're from Arlington because they know it's Gary Leland Day.
Exactly.
I wasn't catching it. I'm not too quick today.
Yeah.
So, it's my birthday. So, let's see. Let's get on to the housekeeping here from my birthday. Make sure, hey, Tony, our Facebook group is getting ready to pass the 1,000 member mark. We don't bring that up very often, but it's like, to me, one of the best Facebook groups on the planet.
It really is. Folks are so helpful and friendly. It's really fun.
It is fun. And you never have anyone jacking you, giving you a hard time for asking a question. Like, I've been on other groups, and I've seen people ask a simple question, what wallet to get, and people are like, do a search on wallets. Everybody's talked about that 50 times here. I've never seen that on our group. And we allow no spamming. You can't get on there and promote your ICOs or whatever. You and I really never talk about what ICOs to buy. I mean, that's not our deal. Mm-hmm. We're not investment advisors. We're just like talking about crypto, but we're not saying, hey, go buy. I don't want to be responsible for someone losing all their crypto, all their money.
Well, let the experts do it. We got John McAfee's got a whole team that's studying ICOs.
Yeah, he can handle that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cousin John. But check out our Facebook group. Just go to Facebook and search Crypto Cousins, and we'll come up. Also, if you want to subscribe anyhow, go to cryptocousins.com/subscribe. That'll have all the methods listed which you can subscribe, and then you can call us with comments or questions at 747-777-9471. But as I said earlier, we're not investment advisors. We're not tax specialists. We're just two dudes that like crypto.
Exactly.
Now, this week we're talking Cousin Jimmy's back, Jimmy Song. He's a smart dude when it comes to crypto.
He's this very smart dude.
Yeah, he's a smart dude. We should get the crypto dudes.
Yeah.
Someone's probably already got crypto chicks. So we can get the crypto dudes. And we could have the Crypto Dudes Club. And if you're in Arlington, check out arlingtoncrypto.com. It's a new site I'm making. I don't know if it's up yet, but it's according to when you listen to it. It may not be up on my birthday, but it may be up if you're a late listener. I notice a lot of people tell me that they go to our episodes, Tony, and start with episode 1 and listen to every show that we have.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so I figure I better tell them about arlingtoncrypto.com in case they're in Dallas-Fort Worth. But, this interview is kind of long, too. We're talking about the Mempool with Jimmy Song, about it being clogged up and full, and different things, but that's a lot of the conversation. So, Tony, you want to give people a little bio, a little information about Jimmy before we go to the interview?
Yeah, Jimmy Song is a Bitcoin developer and entrepreneur based in Austin, Texas. So cousin Jimmy is right down the road from us in Austin, and he attended the University of Michigan and graduated with a degree in mathematics in 1998. He spent some time studying abroad at the Technical University of Budapest. So Jimmy is a very well-respected developer, and he's also a media star. He is an outspoken leader in cryptocurrency with over 83,000 followers on Twitter.
Wow.
And over 14,000 followers on Medium and YouTube. So Jimmy's got a big following. He's not only a tech guy, but he knows how to communicate. And so that's why we really enjoyed having him on the show. He's very eloquent, and we learned a lot.
And he wears a cowboy hat.
Exactly.
So he's not ashamed to show his Texas pride. So we like that a lot. And it was really nice to get to meet Jimmy on air. And actually, I watch him and Tone Vase a lot on YouTube. So I guess instead of us BSing anymore, probably everybody's bored with us. We just say the same old things pretty much over and over and over. Why don't we go to the interview with Cousin Jimmy? Okay, welcome back, Cousin Jimmy. Thanks to have you back. We enjoyed our last interview and ready to go with a new one. Thanks again for coming back.
Thanks for having me again.
And Jimmy, this show we want to talk about the mempool. I saw on your show Off Chain you talking about this subject. I found it really, really fascinating. What is the mempool and why is it so full? What is the mempool? What does that stand for, mempool? A lot of our people probably don't know. Can we just go over that first?
Yeah, sure. So mempool stands for memory pool. If you think about your PC, one of the limitations that you might have is, your RAM, right? Your random access memory. That's your memory. Like in programmer speak, that's your memory. Your hard drive is disk, and you often need to access stuff from the memory. The mempool, as it were, is sort of like before transactions go into a block, they're all sort of in this mempool, and every node has a mempool of transactions. And if you're a miner, you grab transactions from the mempool and sort of construct a block. And then if you find the proof of work, then you publish it. And it becomes part of the Bitcoin blockchain. But that mempool is, first of all, there's no one mempool. There's a bunch of different mempools. And if you're running a node right now, your node has a mempool of transactions. These are transactions that haven't entered the blockchain yet, more or less. And that's where transactions come. That's where the transactions that go into a block come from. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So basically, these are transactions waiting to get assembled and recorded onto the blockchain ledger. So they're sitting around, and within 10 minutes or so, hopefully they'll be on the blockchain. Is that the ideal?
Yeah. So think about it as like you have a bunch of numbers in your memory, right? And until you write it down on a ledger, it's not really in the ledger. I think that's why it's called that, more or less. It's basically in the memory of a bunch of nodes on the network. But until a miner writes it down on the ledger and has the proof of work, which is sort of like a seal on that ledger page, it's not considered a part of the blockchain yet.
I have a question that's kind of to do with this, but how are fees calculated?
Well, they're calculated in a really independent way. So everybody has the right to put in whatever fees that they want in any transaction. So for a long time, people put in 0 fees, and it still went into the blockchain because blocks really weren't full. But nowadays blocks are definitely full. Every block is chock full. It used to be a 1 megabyte block size limit. Now it's something called block weight, and it's always very close to a million in block weight. But more or less, the miner is incentivized to take as much fee as possible. And they have 4 million block weight to play with. And each transaction has sort of a block weight, has a weight associated with it. So when a miner is trying to decide which transactions to take, the miner says, okay, how how much fee am I getting for the space that for the weight that it's going to take up in the block? And if it's pretty high, then they'll probably take it. If it's not, then they won't. So like they take a bunch of transactions from, they sort of sort the mempool by how much weight it has. How much fees per weight it has, and then take the highest ones and fill their blocks with it and then mine that. And that's standard sort of, like algorithm that you would use to maximize your revenue, which is what miners are incentivized to do. So in order to get something in there, you have to make sure you're sort of in that upper range so that a miner will pick it up.
So Jimmy, like an analogy would be like if you go into a restaurant and the waitress, say, is the miner. And so she's going to serve the tables that look like maybe the fat cats are there, the highest tippers, and serve those people first. And so if you don't look like you're not going to be tipping, you're not going to get the service.
Yeah. It's sort of like that. Yeah. I mean, think I'm sure you guys have moved before, right? Like, and you have only like a certain amount, say you have only a certain amount of space on your truck, right? And you would put like the most valuable things in first. But like certain things might be valuable, but still be really big and not really be worthwhile to put in the truck. You know, it might be like a couch that's worth $100, but it's really, really big. Something might be worth less, but it might take up less space. You have to sort of do that calculation. How much space does it take up versus how much value is it? And that's what you would call like value per space taken up. And that's what miners do for each transaction. Figure out how much value in fees that they're getting per space taken up. Sort according to that and put the most valuable things in first, and then publish that. So like trying to figure out fees is a difficult thing, just because so many people, you have to know what other people are going to do to predict it. You know, trying to predict what all of the other market participants are doing is generally going to be pretty hard, because you have to know the minds and priorities of a lot of other people. It's generally not easy.
Okay, and so
that's what's going on.
So why is the mempool full?
Because there's a lot of demand for transactions. We know, for example, that a lot of these businesses that are in Bitcoin, for example, Coinbase, blockchain.info, and Zappo and BitGo, they serve their customers by sending Bitcoin on chain or receiving Bitcoin on chain. So they end up taking a significant part of the block space. But yeah, the block space is limited for a very good reason. Everyone has to store, transmit, and receive and store the entire ledger. Like if it were like sort of infinitely big, then people can sort of attack you by just giving you lots and lots of data that's not really relevant. So thinking about it that way, the fees are there so that you protect the public good, which is the blockchain. The blockchain is kind of like a road or something like that. It's something everyone's using, but you make people that are using it the most sort of pay the most. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. So it's a common, basically, and this commons is if because you have to pay, then you will be able to manage how it's used. But you have some, again, going back to your previous video, you talked a little about Coinbase. Now, some of the players in the field, they're not using the space wisely. And so you have transactions. Can you explain a little bit like how transaction batching or some of these big players are really serving the needs of the miners, not serving the needs of maybe the users?
Well, I mean, they're not even serving themselves. If I have 3 transactions and I make each transaction separate, that's going to incur like some amount of fees. There's sort of like overhead for each transaction that you have to pay for. But if you batch them, if you have 3 customers you need to pay out and you just do it in one transaction instead of 3 separate ones, that's going to be cheaper. And everyone knows that that's a lot easier. You don't have to account for them separately. You can account for them all at the same time. And you only have to pay the overhead once, so that's a lot cheaper, and that's what most exchanges do. Coinbase is a little bit strange. I'm convinced that they're still sort of utilizing a lot of the tech that they built in 2013 when fees weren't really a big deal, and they haven't been able to upgrade because it's totally in their interest to reduce the fees that they're paying on the network, because that's money in their pocket, but they haven't done so. And I think it's more an engineering problem than anything else.
I see. So it's not really because Bitcoin's full of drama. It's not any bad intent. It's not anything having to do with, say, another Bitcoin clone or working with miners. It's really more of an engineering problem. They just haven't gotten around to batching these transactions. I mean, Gary and I get paid from a mining pool, and the mining pool pays out one transaction to many, many, many miners at once, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's exactly how most exchanges operate. It's just Coinbase. I always come back to if you can describe it if don't ascribe to malice what can be explained by incompetence. This looks more like incompetence.
Okay, we'll just go with that.
So go ahead, Tony.
Gary, go ahead.
Well, I had seen on one of your shows, you were talking about, I found this fascinating, and you weren't saying this was limited to Coinbase necessarily, but there was a wallet on Coinbase with 715,000 addresses and 308 Bitcoins that was making small transactions. And that was kind of weird. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think what that algorithm is doing is, at least back in 2013, 2014, it was a big deal to make sure you didn't get hacked, or to minimize the amount that a hacker could get from you if they hacked into your server. So I think what that whole splitting algorithm that they were doing was it would, in order to sort of mitigate that, as soon as you got any sort of Bitcoin into your system, you sort of split it some amount into a hot wallet and some amount into a cold wallet. And a cold wallet is one that's just not online, so it can't really get hacked very easily. You have to actually be on the premises or have access to the cold wallet in order to be able to get at the Bitcoins. So I think that's what that algorithm was doing is any deposit that comes in, they split it. Unfortunately, some of the deposits can be kind of small, and if you split them, then they get really tiny, and the fees don't cover the cost of moving that coin. And it seems that they just sort of left that there since 2013, 2014, and they don't realize a lot of these tiny transactions have more or less gathered up, and it's just dust that they can't really get rid of or economically transact. And that seems to be what's happened. At least that's my theory anyway. There's conspiracy theories about them just trying to spam the blockchain or to make everything slow so they can get what they want. Again, I think it's more incompetence and not malice.
Well, I guess it makes sense. I mean, if I were managing billions of dollars and there was a whole big mess of dust, and that
technicals of it, but if you receive Bitcoins into SegWit addresses and spend from them, the amount of space it takes up is less than if you used a normal legacy address. And that's actually a decent savings. So you're economically incentivized to use SegWit, and a lot of people do for that reason. And you can fit more transactions. Block sizes can actually go up to all the way to 4 megabytes. So I think it optimizes at around 2. So I think 2 megabyte blocks are more the reality. And when people say SegWit is a block size increase, this is exactly what it means. As more people use SegWit, there's more block space to be had because they just take up less room. It's you can think of it as ledger entries that are smaller or don't require a very large signature.
So for our listeners, basically, SegWit is short for segregated witness. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And basically, it's kind of, I guess, one way to describe it is maybe like JPEG or something. You're basically taking out information that's not necessary to be put on the blockchain. So all these signatures, they get added up, especially multi-sig, and you end up with a transaction that gets recorded in a smaller number of bytes. And isn't it true? It doesn't matter if you're sending $10 or $10 million. you're only paying for the size of the transaction in bytes.
Yes,
it's not really the value.
Yes, that's exactly right. And yeah, they still get recorded. They're just not counted as heavily. So like the U.S. Postal Service does this with media mail, right? Like they usually charge you by weight, but if you're shipping books or something like that, and for some reason they don't. And I think it's because they wanted to support book publishers or something like that. And it's a little bit like that in the sense that SegWit is, solves a lot of other problems. And there's sort of like, this is what's called the witness discount, is that if you're utilizing SegWit, then you can sort of ship things a little faster or for a little cheaper. It's something like that.
So coming back to the practical, like our users, say a user has a Nano, Ledger Nano, which I have. And then when it says, which blockchain do you want to use? And so you choose your blockchain, choose Bitcoin. This is, you want to use regular wallet or segregated witness wallet. So if you choose segregated witness, is there any danger in your transactions not going through if you're trying to work with somebody who's not using a segregated witness address?
No, I mean, it's got the same exact security properties as the legacy address. It's just going to be cheaper to spend from them. So you're going to pay less fees when you're paying somebody else.
You're paying somebody. But if you were receiving and the person who was sending to you wasn't a segregated witness original address, it doesn't matter. It still gets you.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones paying. Whenever you pay somebody, you're the one paying the fees. So
okay, that makes sense. Okay, so it's more about the paying. Sure,
yes.
Cool.
How about Schnorrs? Could you tell us what that is and how that could help?
Schnorr signatures?
Yes.
So Schnorr signatures are a different way to sign something. So like like for a long time, people sign checks with a pen or whatever. And then like they came out with like DocuSign, where you can just sort of do it online, like finger on a tablet or your mouse or something like that. I would say it's a little bit like that in the sense that there's some optimizations that you can make with this different type of signature. It's still you, and it's still proving that you own the key, own the private key. But it's a little bit it's a lot better for something like multi-sig, for example. So right now in Bitcoin, you can do something like 2 of 3, 3 of 5, 7 of 19, whatever. Like you can say, okay, 7 of these 16 people have to sign something. It doesn't have to be a majority. Just set whatever rule. Some number of signatures are required before this coin can get released, and that can be very useful for enterprises and things like that. The only problem with that is that a signature is kind of big. So a signature is like 75 bytes or something. I think it's 72. And each signature is 72 bytes. So on a normal transaction, if you have like one input, that's like 72 bytes in signature, and then like 50 bytes and everything else, like 125 bytes. And you pay for those that amount as part of the transaction. You have something like a multi-sig, like a 2 of 3. That means you need 2 signatures on it. So that's like 150 bytes plus the overhead. That ends up being like 200 bytes. So it's more expensive, right? Because it just takes up more space on the blockchain. And think about like 5 of 11 or something like that. It's going to be even more signatures and going to take up even more block space, so it's going to be more expensive. With Schnorr signatures, what you can do is sort of like aggregate signatures, and you prove that 5 different people signed this, but it's sort of like on the same line on the checksum, instead of like making the check really big so you can accommodate 5 signatures. You can all sort of sign on the same line, verify that it was signed by each of those people.
I see.
That makes it very, very efficient for a lot of reasons, but not the least of which is that you're saving a lot of space in transmission and things like that. So that's one of the really interesting things about Schnorr. And Peter Willa came out with a paper based on aggregating signatures, I think in the last few days, that basically describes this. You can compress like hundreds of signatures into a single 32-byte hash, which is like kind of incredible. And Andy Polstra's, I think, talked about scriptless scripts in Mempool, and you could do that for like millions and millions, and it doesn't grow that much, which is really, really interesting, because if you can sort of take out the blockchain with something like Mimblewimble, then you can prove lots of things in a really interesting way.
Fantastic.
I have one more question personally. I don't know if you have any more, Tony, but can forks cause any issues to the mempool?
Can forks, I mean, other than the market reacting, I mean, a lot of times people move their coins after a fork so they can, successfully get coins from the fork. So there's that. But
I didn't think there was, but I mean,
there's always like sort of nonlinear effects. Like, people might be moving them because they're anticipating a fork happening, so they move it into Bitcoin, and then after the fork happens, they move it out, and that would obviously spam the mempool because people are moving coins all over the place. But like actual physically, like if I'm moving Bitcoin Cash, it doesn't change anything in Bitcoin, and vice versa.
Tony, you have anything else? Because I think we need to let Jimmy go. We're less than he said he would be, but we're more than we said we'd be.
No, I guess the last question would be: is there anything on the horizon that you're most excited about?
I'm excited about all of the things going on. There's a lot of tech and people. I've been teaching a lot of people to program Bitcoin, and that's very exciting to me. There just aren't that many Bitcoin developers, and the fact that there's such a large number of people that want to become that gives me a lot of hope going forward. But as far as projects go, I mean, I've always been a big fan of sidechains. I'd like to see them implemented. But yeah, we'll see where that goes.
How can people follow you, Jimmy?
You can follow me on Twitter @JimmySong. I write some articles, though not as much lately, on Medium @JimmySong. You can look at the code I'm writing on GitHub @JimmySong.
Well, Jimmy, I appreciate you coming on the show and taking the time with us again. This was really good information. I learned a lot. So, like I said, that's the whole purpose of the show, is to educate us while educating our listeners.
Thank you, Jimmy.
And Jimmy, I'm going to steal something from you, if that's okay.
That's fine.
This song is over. Thanks,
you.
Jimmy.
And we're back. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. What'd you think, Tony?
I really want to have Jimmy on again. I learn a lot. He really knows his stuff, and I think that our cousins are ramping up their knowledge as well.
Yeah, I agree completely. Oh, and I learn something every time, but I learn something every day about crypto anyway, so that's nothing new for me. So that was kind of why we started this podcast, to be honest with you, Tony, was to educate ourselves and share our information as we learn it with all the cousins out there.
Exactly. If we're learning it, we might as well share it. And it's really been a great ride. We've been able to go to conferences, meet people, interview interesting folks and really, really bright folks in the space.
And, I also want to say that, at the end of every episode, we've been starting to tell you guys that we love you, but we really do, because this is like a family here. When I'm at events and stuff, I'm starting to see people now that come up. Tony, you had someone the other day that recognized your voice.
Yeah. I was like,
and said, "You're a crypto cousin. I recognize your voice."
Mm-hmm.
He had never seen us before, and he recognized your voice. We are getting approached all the time by people who recognize us either from the videos or our voice or seeing our coin or something. So we really do love and appreciate all the help and support we've been getting from everybody. And just the positive vibes that we get from everybody are so cool.
Yeah, we do love you guys.
So I'm not going to take up a lot of your time, but today, because we've had a long show again, we can't go with a short show. Tony, that's just not in our being. Good thing we don't head for an hour show.
Yeah, exactly.
We say that all the time too, but some things are true, so you can't help but saying them over and over and over. But I do want to tell everybody thanks for listening. We'll see you next episode. Make sure, and whatever you're listening to us, I say this every week. Another thing I say all the time is make sure and leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening, or a great comment, and subscribe to our show so you can get every episode at cryptocousins.com/subscribe. And that's really about it. Anything else you want to add, Tony, before we get out of here?
That's it for me.
Okay.
Thanks for listening.
Love all you guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Crypto Cousins podcast, Please share this podcast with anyone you know that is interested in cryptocurrency. Your friends can subscribe on iTunes at cryptocousins.com/iTunes and on Android at cryptocousins.com/play. If you want to know more about Tony or Gary, just go to tonysakala.com or garyleland.com. Make sure and join us on the next episode, and thanks for listening. The Crypto Cousins podcast and information in the podcast are not intended as investment advice. Cryptocurrencies are risky. Never invest more than you can afford to lose. Always seek professional advice before making any investment. Investing in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies may present tremendous risks. Please understand that you are using any and all information available on or through the Crypto Cousins podcast at your own risk.